Come take a seat. All right, so where we are, if you can picture the map from yesterday, the model, that we saw yesterday. All right, we are on the northwest corner of the Temple Mount. Anybody remember what was on the northwest corner of the Temple Mount? The large Antonia fortress. Right here, we see on the northwest corner, right behind this guy's head, was this huge, gigantic fortress that Herod built, right, that he named after his boss, Mark Antony, right, to have a strategic overview of the Temple Mount, allow easy access, right, for the Romans to go onto the Temple Mount in case there's any problems, right, that occur there, and there's a handful that sometimes happen here. Okay, this is the Temple Mount. Here we see Mount of Olives. Here are the Gardens of Gethsemane, where we were earlier. All right, Pools of Bethesda, and the Antonia Fortress. Right now, the Romans, right, when they broke through the city, they broke through the third wall, then they broke through the second wall. Right, they came in through the Antonia Fortress and pretty much destroyed it, like took it down stone by stone in order to get to the temple, right, to the temple area where most of the fighting, the hard fighting takes place. And later, when Hadrian rebuilds the city, right, he's going to be using some of the stones from the Antonia Fortress. Now, before I get into that, Jesus, right, from Garden of Gethsemane, he's taken into the city to be, at first, given a trial by the Sanhedrin, right, led by the high priest Caiaphas, right, and this trial takes place during the nighttime, right, which is against Jewish law, right. All trials and judgments, things like this, need to take place during the daylight. Now they find Jesus guilty of blasphemy, right, and they sentence him to death, right, or let me put it like this: they find him guilty, right, and they want to carry out capital punishment, but they can't do this. Right? They have to go to Pilate. Why is this? Because the Sanhedrin had lost the ability to carry out capital punishment. Right? It had it a number of years ago, a number of years before, and then at a certain point, the Romans took it away because the state has a monopoly on violence. Right? And only the state can carry out a capital punishment. Right? This is why, even though he's found guilty by the Sanhedrin, right, they had to take him over to Pilate for the Romans to carry out the sentencing. All right, so where is Pontius Pilate? So as I mentioned, the traditional location, right, is here at the Antonia Fortress, right, where where Pontius Pilate would be with his soldiers, right? And so if this is where they bring him, right, this is the location where we're at is where the Antonia Fortress was, right? And when Pontius Pilate says to bring Jesus out onto the Lithostras, out onto the stone pavement, these stones that we're standing on, right, could have been part of that stone pavement that was part of the Antonia Fortress, right? When they build these modern churches, right, they had to dig down into the ground to create strong foundations, right? And they found these stones, right, from the first, second century of Jerusalem, and they brought them up to our level, right? 9 feet, they brought them up and placed them down, right? So you could walk upon the stones, right? That could have been the location of where the trial takes place. Now, Pontius Pilate, at first, he doesn't really want to deal with Jesus. It's below his station. This is a local issue, right? So he sends him over to Herod, right? Herod Antipas, right? Who's king of the Galilee, where Jesus is from. So it's his jurisdiction. He doesn't really find anything wrong with Jesus either, and he sends him back to Pontius Pilate. Then Pontius Pilate is now between a rock and a hard place, right? The crowds that are here in Pilate, they are screaming for Jesus to be killed by Rome. Why is this? Who are the people, right, that are yelling this? Right? These are not the same crowds of people, the Jews that sang Hosanna and put palm branches at the feet of Jesus, right, just a few days earlier. Right? And they're not the daughters of Jerusalem that are going to be weeping for Jesus in just a few hours' time when he's on his way out of the city. So who is it? Who's here? Right? It's the elite. Right? It's the aristocracy, the priestly class, right, who want people like Jesus to be dealt with promptly. Because the priests, right, they have the most to lose. And Jesus is not the first and he is not the last Jew to claim to be the Messiah. right? Josephus writes about there are many different people coming to Jerusalem claiming to be the Messiah, right? This is a messianic fever all in the area, because in the minds of people, because they believe that God is not going to allow his chosen people, the Jewish people, to be underneath the thumb and the boot of the Romans, right? And they're so strong, the only way, it's not like the Greeks, right? The only way we're going to be able to defeat the Romans is if we have the Messiah on our side. And the Messiah is coming, right? He will now not allow this to continue, right? And so Josephus talks about how there was a Jew from Alexandria who comes to Jerusalem during one of the pilgrimage holidays, and he has like 10, 20,000 followers, right, and claiming to be the Messiah, and the Romans kill him along with all the thousands of other followers, right? And so the priests don't want this to happen. They don't want these messianic people coming and getting the people all riled up, right? And they start defying Rome, and then all these people are going to be killed, right? It's a waste. They don't believe he's the Messiah anyway, right? And they don't want people, right, causing problems with the Romans, because they don't want a rebellion to take place, right? That's the worst thing that could happen for their point of view, for two main reasons. One, right, if there was a revolt against the Romans might destroy the temple, right? And that is horrible, and that's of course what ends up happening, right? But the other side is if there is a revolt, right, and the Jews are successful against Rome, these are going to be the first people to be on the outs, right, to be killed, because they would be viewed as collaborators, right, of the Roman occupiers, right? So either way, they don't want any kind of rebellion taking place. And so it's very important, right, that they get rid, right, of Jesus, just like they got rid of, or just like how the Romans dealt with all the other messianic people, right? Stop it in its tracks. And so Pontius Pilate relents. He orders Jesus, right, to be executed. First, he is beaten by the Roman soldiers. Now, in this area, by the way, is also to commemorate the same area, because it makes sense. He's going to be beaten in the area where you have the trial as well. So that also would take place inside the Antonia fortress. Now, when they're done beating Jesus, right, the Roman soldiers, they play a game with him, right? They take a cloth of purple, which is the color of royalty, right? Put it on him. They make a crown of thorns, right? Then they give him a reed as a scepter, right? And they start, acting as if this is the king of the Jews. Why are they doing this? Maybe this is something connected to a holiday that they like to play, or that they celebrate, I should say, around December. It's called Saturnalis, right? In this holiday of Saturnalis, what they do, they take a slave, and he becomes king for a day, right? And they dress him up in all the royal garb, right? He can give orders around. He eats food. He drinks wine. He has a merry old time. And at the end of this day, this slave who's been king for a day, they kill this slave, right? And so maybe this is what they're remembering, right? Though this is a guy who's claiming to be the Jews, we're going to kill him, right? Just like our holiday Saturnalis, let's dress him up just like we do with the slave, right? And so maybe this is why they're doing this and playing with Jesus. Now on his way out, right, on his way to the outside of the city, right, he would leave the Antonia fortress, right, making its way, leaving the wall, the Herod's wall, right, which we don't know 100% where it is, right, to a quarry, right, where there are Jewish tombs along the cliff face. And here this is Golgotha. Now, if alternatively, if the trial took place over here, right, he would exit this area and come out somewhere around here. Something like this, right? The only thing, again, that's different here than what Jesus would have been, this third wall. This third wall didn't exist at the time of Jesus. It was built only after. Any questions? All right, so if you guys, you know what? I think the churches are doing mass, so we can't go inside the churches. Right, but here, again, these are the stones that could have been laid down as part of the floor of the Antonia fortress. Right, the stone pavement, as mentioned in the book of John. So what we're going to do now, we're going to head back out on the street and start walking down the Via Dolorosa, right? This is station number 1 and 2 of the Via Dolorosa. I'll explain it now so we don't do it. When we go out on the street, right, the building that will be on the left-hand side, right, there's a circular bronze Roman numeral that says station 1, right? The Antonia Fortress would cover both sides of the street. Okay, so it's still one building. Station 1 is on the other side of the street. This is where the trial takes place. And then Station 2 is where we are. This is the beating, right? The condemnation of Jesus takes place over here. Yes? But still all within the same fortress. So when the Romans built Jerusalem as a Roman pagan city, they built it using the Roman and Greek engineering lines, right? So there's going to be a Cardo right, that goes north-south through the city. And there's actually two corridors that go through the city. There is the western corridor and the eastern corridor. And during the time of the pagan era of Jerusalem, of the Roman Jerusalem, this was the main corridor. If we were to walk back this road, it would take us all the way back to Damascus Gate, right, which is where the beginning, right, of the corridor for the Roman time period begins, over there. Now, a few years ago, the sewage and the pipes underneath the street was damaged or needed to be fixed, and so they don't go down to fix the pipes, and they decide to bring archaeologists with them, because you never know what you're going to find, and they go down 9 feet and they find the street level of Jerusalem from the 1st and 2nd century and brought it up, right, to our level. And that's what we see these border police, they're standing on, right, these are the ancient stones, and we'll see some we can actually stand on ones of those that want, right. So if this was a street, all right, if Jesus did walk this way on his way out of the city, right, he could have walked over some of these stones. Next to here are two more stations, two sort of chapels connected to the station, the Via Dolorosa. Via Dolorosa, by the way, just so everybody understands, is a Catholic institution, right, that was established during the Crusader period, right, that commemorate different events on the way of Jesus on his way from the trial to his death, right? And different time periods you'll have more, like today there's 14, but at time periods there were 16, other times there was, I think, 12, right? Now, not every one of these stations is an event that's mentioned in the Bible, right? So it's an apocryphal account, right, passed down from Christian oral tradition. So stations number 3 and 4, which we see right over here, right, these are oral traditions. Jesus falls 3 times on his way out of the city because it's very difficult to carry either the cross or the beam, right? He's just been beaten. So station number 3 is where Jesus falls, right? And then station 4, he sees his mother Mary in the crowds, right? And then he gets back up and then continues walking along to the way out of the city. And that's what we're going to do. Okay, station number 5 is mentioned in the Bible. This is an account mentioned in the Bible on his way out. A man named Simon of Cyrene, right, is forced to help Jesus carry the cross or the beam because, again, he can't. It's really difficult to carry this heavy piece of wood. And so Simon of Cyrene, which is in like the area of Libya today, a Jewish pilgrim, he is forced to help Jesus carry the cross, right, up the hill, because now he's going to start walking up the hill to get out of the city. On the left-hand side of the church, you'll see like a little bit of the bedrock exposed, right? According to a tradition, Jesus on his way out put his hand sort of on the rock to sort of support himself, and his hand left an imprint in the rock itself, and you can see sort of like the image of an imprinted hand, right? But he would have continued, right, walking up, which is what we're going to be doing now. So stop right here. This is station number 6. Station number 6 is another one of these apocryphal accounts. This is not mentioned in the Bible. On the way out of the city, Jesus meets a woman named Veronica. And Veronica gives him a cloth to wipe his face. Right? And the true image of Jesus was imprinted on this cloth. Right? And it became a very holy relic, especially in the medieval and Renaissance period, known as the veil of Veronica. Now, the action that takes place here, the miracle that takes place, sort of gets transferred onto the woman. What do I mean by that? Right, the true image of Jesus is on this cloth. Right, the way that you say truth in Latin is vera, image is icona, vera icona becomes Veronica. Right, and now this is not to be confused with the Shroud of Turin, which also has supposedly imprint of Jesus, but this is his burial shroud. Right, not the veil of Veronica. Right, so this site commemorates where this supposedly takes place, and we're going to continue walking up the hill. At the top of the hill, we see this little chapel, station number 7. This is the second time Jesus falls on his way out of the city, according to the tradition. Now we're going to walk up to station number 8. Right, and then we're going to walk back down. It's just like 25 meters. If you don't feel like having to walk up the stairs just to walk back down, you can wait at the bottom because we're going to come back down to this major road. Right, but if you don't mind the little walk, we're going to go to station number 8. Okay, so this is station number 8. This is mentioned in the Bible, right? On the way out of Jerusalem, the daughters of Jerusalem are weeping and crying for Jesus because they don't like what the elites have done, right? And so they're weeping for him. And Jesus never thinking of himself, he says, don't wait, don't cry for me, I'm fine. Cry for yourselves, right? Cry for Jerusalem, because he already knows, right, that the Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. The people are going to be killed or sold into slavery, right? In just a few decades, this prophecy, of course, will come true, right? So they should weep for themselves and repent for themselves. Now, the way that Jesus would have continued, if this was the path, he would have continued walking this way, right, until he leaves the gates, right, of the city. But because of the modern city and the church, right, we're not going to walk this way. We're going to walk back down, get to the Cardo, and walk along the western Cardo. Remember I said there were two? So this is the western Cardo, right? And this leads to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Any questions? All right, let's head back. All right, just remember what I said about Roman Cardos and Greek Cardos. Right, on either side of the road, you're going to have shops, right? And the modern city of Jerusalem, the old city, right? The design is still being determined by that civil Roman engineering plan of the 2nd century when they built the Cardo in the first place, all the way from Damascus Gate, the era of Damascus Gate today, all the way to the south. Right, we'll see when we get to the Jewish quarter. Right, so we're still shopping along the Cardo 2,000 years later. Watch out for this little rickshaw thing. Station 9. We have to go up a whole bunch of steps to get to it. The third time Jesus falls on his way out. Right, and that's on the roof of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.